What's up, you guys? Welcome back to the WeBus podcast. Today, I am here with Dr. Chard. We are talking about courageous parenting. And Dr. Chard owns Courageous Parents, which offers support, education, and coaching for parents. She's a PhD in human bioenergetics out of the state or Colorado State University. And she works with the Regional Institute for Health and Environmental Leadership as a director in advanced leadership training. She recently did a TED Talk at the Mountain Avenue TEDx in May of 2024 titled The Real Reason We Punish Children and What to Do Instead. She argues that traditional punishment can be counterproductive and proposes an alternative that's rooted in trust, compassion, repair, and connection. And she uses the three R's of responsiveness, reflectiveness, and repairing to help parents overcome daily issues that they're going through. Did I say that correct, Dr. Chard?
Chard, like the
Chard.
vegetable.
Oh man, I was like, I know it's like mentioned it like the vegetable, but I was like, I don't know if that's what she said or said it's opposite of the vegetable. So, Chard, Dr. Chard, thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, I'm just delighted to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, you're kidding me? We're so stoked. Anybody that does TEDx talks and wants to talk to us, we're like, oh, we are not worthy. We are not worthy. And listening to your TEDx talk, it was right up our alley. Exactly what we're going for when it comes to our dads that are in WeBus, of being able to parent our kids a little more gently, listen to them, respond instead of react. All of the things that you were saying in your TEDx talk, I was like, yes, we got to get her on the podcast. We got to talk more to her and get to know her a little bit more. So I got to start there. What inspired you to do the TEDx talk? And was there like a personal story that kind of fit with that?
Yeah. Thank you so much. I think the first thing that I always want to say, and anytime I'm talking about parenting, is none of us have it figured out. Like that's just the truthiest truth. We are all figuring this out as we go. And I think that's important to say because when someone comes on and, like I'm a parenting coach, part of why I think I'm a really good coach is because I am very much in it and figuring it out right alongside my clients. So I just want to ground us in that and the reality that parenting feels hard because it is really hard. And so for me, part of giving the talk was I saw a lot of the kind of parenting around like punishment and grounding and a lot of the way that we were parented. And I work with a lot of young people, middle school and high school age, and I was hearing them share things about the relationship they had with their parents and how strained it was because they didn't feel like their parents understood them, would listen, could see them. And really, so much of it came down to parents constantly giving advice, telling our kids what they should be doing, pointing out the ways that they're not doing it well enough. And so that really had me just digging into the literature. What do we know about punishment? What are the impacts? What else is out there around how to get to that ultimate end goal? So that really is kind of how it all started. And for myself personally, so many of us had parents in that same age group and generation. And we are now kind of unpacking, what went well, what might have needed more of or less of or different. So I think it's a lot of things that came together.
I love it. When you think back on the talk that you gave, and now it's been a year, a little over a year. Is there anything that you would have changed, or are you still holding true to everything that you said in there?
I think I still hold true to just about all of it, I'm trying to think.
I ask because, you said you're going through it right now and you can see on your website, you got your kids with you and stuff, and you're in the middle of parenting. And as we parent, I think that life, oh, I see why my parents said that in the past and, and now why I need to do it this way. And so I was just curious if as you parent or help other parents, if you found anything like that.
I think it's like because my philosophy is so rooted in self-reflection and openness, humility, like a learning orientation, like that keeps me, I think, learning and shifting and growing over time. So I think the basic principles probably stay the same while perhaps approaches may shift. But by and large, I think at the core, it all still comes down to ultimately, what do we want for our kids? And I think this is actually important to talk about when it comes to punishment, because when we're in the moment and our kids have done something and we snap, it's hard to be thinking about what's my end goal for my kids, right? Like that, you can't always think like on your feet like that. So I think it's always worth taking some time outside the moment when we're not upset with them to say, what do I really want for my kids?
Yeah.
Most often, I think we want them to grow up thriving and being thoughtful and reflective and productive and kind and generous both to others and themselves. So when I think about what do I ultimately want for my kids, then I can kind of work backward from there and say what kind of approach to discipline leads me to that end goal and what might be getting in the way of that end goal.
And let's say that a parent, doesn't do that and they do react. What's the most important thing, in your opinion, after that's settled in coming back to the child and making up for that reaction?
I love this question because I actually think it's like perhaps the most important parenting skill is around repair. And one of the folks in the kind of parenting space, Dr. Becky, talks about, and I just want to give her credit for this, the first step in repair is messing it up. So it's like, I think about that. I'm like, okay, well, I don't have a chance to repair if I don't first mess it up. Right. So it's like, oh, well, screamed at my kids. I didn't want to do that. Step one, check, right? Like I'm
Got it.
in the repair process. But when I think about repair, there's a few things I think about. One of which is taking that moment to pause and reflect. We have to actually let it settle into us that we acted outside of alignment with our values. Feeling guilt, that's what guilt is, right? I acted outside of alignment with my values. Side note, versus shame, which is I'm bad or there's something wrong with me. You can't do a lot from shame. You can do a lot from guilt, right? Because guilt says, that's not how I wanted to react. I have a chance to make amends or do something different. But we do have to hold, even if just for a few minutes, like, that didn't feel good, right? Like, that sucked. I really wish I hadn't done that. But just sitting with that little bit of discomfort, that's what drives action, right? That's what shifts things for us. So for me, it's like the first part is that reflection and like the self repair, the self apology of like, Chrissy, I know you didn't want to react that way. It's all right. You had a lot going on, right? It doesn't justify it, but you know, you had a lot going on. That's okay. You're working on it too. Sometimes I'll say like, parenting is hard and so is being a kid, right? Like it's just hard for everybody. So that self-repair piece and then going to your child. And I think the message to our kiddos is, hey, I messed that up. That isn't how I wanted to respond. You're not responsible. I'm responsible actually for my reactions. And I'm going to try X, Y, or Z next time. I'm going to try to jump in a little earlier before things escalate, or I'm going to try to ask you a question first before I assume. And just sharing with them. And not only does that help like with your relationship with your kiddos, but I think about what that models for them about healthy relationships. I mean, how many of us are completely conflict averse, right? We didn't learn how to be in conflict in a healthy, productive way. How powerful for them to see in close relationships, people are going to mess it up, but I deserve to be apologized to. And it
Yes.
also keeps them connected with like, oh yeah, that didn't feel good. Right? It's like an anti-gaslighting, right? It says
Oh,
to them
yeah,
like,
that's a great way to look at it.
yeah, you felt
Anti-gaslighting.
bad. Yes. And you should have felt like that didn't feel good and you were right to notice that.
I remember when I first started digging into this with, my own therapist and talking about repairing after you've, maybe reacted a little too much, and sitting in that feeling and being really surprised with how long you have to sit with that before it even gets to the point where you feel like you could go repair. It's like, man, those hormones are real and they really stick with you for a while. And it's not as easy as just being like, oh, yeah, I messed up. Time to go repair. It's like, it's in my chest, it's in my gut. I can't get it to go away. I'm having a hard time breathing. Like I want to just get away from this situation, but it's within staying in that situation and feeling all of that and allowing it to dissipate, recognizing when it does dissipate that it's now time physically and mentally to go try to repair. It's like almost that it's not that parents don't want to do that. It's like they don't have the time to be able to do that. It is like kid messes up or something happens, or I wouldn't even say kid messes up, right? Kid being kid, something happens, a parent reacts. And before they can, oh, you know what? I need to actually take a break here. I need to breathe. It's like, no, it's because we got to go. We got things to do. How much do you think today's society really plays a role in the parents' inability to really get to that point, even?
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing this up. The way I think about it is like, it makes it easy not to, right? Because there's so much vying for our time and attention that it's almost like it doesn't keep us from it, but it sure makes it easy not to prioritize because there's so many other pieces. And there's a couple things I think about. It's like, this is the other piece I always want to make sure is so clear for parents is like, it is never too late. Like, and you know this, right? Neuroplasticity, our brains, right? Anything that's been wired in us absolutely can be rewired. And that includes like the ability to repair with our kiddos, even if it was something that happened a year ago, 5 years ago, if you have older kids,
2 years ago.
it literally doesn't matter. And I think, sometimes I'll use this analogy. It's like if my parent called me right now and said to me, "Hey, Chris, like I've been thinking about it and I think I messed some things up when I was trying to parent you, and I'm really sorry. And if you ever want to talk about it, I'd really love to talk to you about it." Like, I get goosebumps, right? It would matter even now. So that reminder, like, if it happened a few years ago, you got plenty of time. Like, there's time because I think we can so quickly go to a place of guilt and even shame that message that it is never too late is so, so, so important. Yeah. And to your point also, Wes, about like, it's real uncomfortable, especially if you didn't have this modeled for you, right? Like it would make perfect sense that your body is on fire when you mess it up. Because what that signals, and again, this is so many of us, is like there was no space to feel this when we were young. And I don't blame our parents. Like, I really believe many parents were doing the best they could, right? There were some that were not, but many of us had parents who we would say, I had a pretty good childhood. Yeah, that's great. And we just never had that model for us. What comes naturally to us when it comes to parenting, it's not intuitive. It's whatever was modeled for us. That's what is natural. So it takes some like unlearning and like feeling this uncomfortable stuff and learning to sit with it. And I think the data says that most feelings you will experience the height of it for 90 seconds or less. I think that's like the most commonly accepted. Like if you can tolerate whatever that is for 90 seconds, that wave will start to dissipate. But it can be a really uncomfortable 90 seconds.
I was gonna say that 90 seconds can feel really long. It's like you put somebody in a cold plunge for 90 seconds that's not used to being in a cold plunge. That feels like an eternity. And it's the same feeling for most, I think, dads out there is like they're trying to be what their fathers' fathers, their fathers' fathers' fathers were. That was what they were told to be, was a man and to act this way and be this way and provide for your family and do it. But all of a sudden we had this over the last 50 years, this really big shift in terms of what life is like now, and the roles in the house have completely shifted. So for us to try to go through life the same way as a father, it doesn't make much sense anymore. And I think that that's the big resistance that we're feeling, is that it's not that men don't want to do this, men don't want to be more forgiving, more responsive and less reactive. It's that exactly what you said, we've been trained to be the opposite. What would you say to I remember hearing something the other day that was like millennials are the first generation to ever try to actually repair the traumas that they went through, and all of the other generations have just kind of dealt with them and worked through them, right? I think we're at an unfair advantage or disadvantage because of that. We're trying to do something. Anytime you're the first ones trying to do something, right, it's much tougher. But what advice do you give to not a new, but let's say a dad that's got teenagers right now and is trying to overcome the first 13 years of parenting that they did, and they're recognizing that this isn't the way to do it anymore, but they might feel like it's a little too late, like you just said, it's never too late, right? But practically, what do they do in that moment with their kids? What do they start doing to start repairing that in those, the years when it's the hardest to create a relationship with your kids, probably?
Yeah. For sure. I appreciate the question, because part of it is that repair piece, importantly with yourself, right? Because if you haven't made amends or forgiven or at least like done some of that work with yourself to say, this isn't how I wanted to do it, it doesn't mean I'm a bad person, right? If you haven't done that, that shame is just going to keep getting in the way, no matter what you try. Because if you've been doing it one way for a while, any shift is going to feel clunky. It's going to feel uncomfortable. You're going to feel like you don't know what you're doing. So to overcome that along with all this shame, that is an astronomical ask of somebody. So for me, that's why doing your own work over here, maybe it's with a therapist, with a group of guys, right? Like having a community that you can actually process some of that and be like, I'm not a bad person. I just messed it up, right? I didn't do it the way I wanted to. Doing that, I think, is a necessary piece in order to show up with your kid and do some of these other things that we can talk about, one of which is repair, right? And
So
saying similar to,
before you try to repair anything else.
yeah. Yes, again, because you're just going to keep bumping up against it. You may have to have a thick skin. Kids are very honest, right? Like they are, and love it or hate it, they are just going to tell you like it is. And so that, I think, requires of us a bit of a thick skin, right? If my kid is super dysregulated, they might be yelling things at me that are like, where'd you even learn this? So having that like sense of sturdiness of yourself so that you can tolerate some backlash or pushback. So I think that's one piece that feels really important. The other piece is that repair. And I think in that repair is like what I was saying about, I really want to hear how it's felt for you. I'm open to hearing if and when you want to share, right? And not pushing it, but keeping that door open. Um, and then being able to receive it. And this is where it can get really hard,
Yeah.
is how do we keep ourselves open to hearing what our kids have to say when it might not feel good? One of my go-tos every once in a while when I'm feeling pretty good, I'll ask my kids, like, how do you think I'm doing right now in my parenting? And they will tell me, like, I don't think you're spending enough one-on-one time with me. Or,
I'm doing a 360 review with your children.
yeah, exactly. And if you want honest, but they will tell you. And they're also really good accountability partners, right? Because if I say, well, that's a good point, I would like to spend a little more time one-on-one with you,
Hold you
they'll
to
hold you to it,
it. Uh,
Yes, yes. And if it's something you said that you would do, they will remember. But I think those are some of the things, like practically. And then, one of the things, like when I think about dads and building a connection with your kiddo, and we talked a little bit about this, like with the role that dads play. One of the most important roles dads play, just like evolutionarily over time, where we are today, is, and actually I wrote down the quote so we could talk about it if we wanted to. This is Anna Machin. She's an um, evolutionary anthropologist. And she studies and she's on a quest to make sure that dads understand the critically important role that they play. And so she talks about it as scaffolding a child's entry into the world beyond the family. So it's like dad's role is to help kids leave the nest a little bit. It's like healthy risk taking. Like I think about roughhousing. Roughhousing is like one of the best and most important things that kids can experience, because you are having to like test out risks and you are having to check in with the other person and say, was that still fun? Oh, something changed in your demeanor. Did I cause, pain? It's like there's so much richness in
yeah.
roughhousing and play that is helping our kids figure out how to take healthy risks, how to be courageous, how to interact with other people. So I think that's another really important piece, is to understand what is the and are the really important roles dads play, and then what are some of the activities like roughhousing, for example, that I can do with my kiddo.
Yeah, I remember hearing that actually in a podcast a long time ago, that is the role. I think it was Dr. Gabor Mate that was talking
Yeah.
about it. saying the role of a parent is to or a dad is to roughhouse and to teach them the boundaries of what people can and can't do to them physically and what they can and can't do physically and mentally. And what's so funny, my wife always gets mad at me at the end of the night because we're always roughhousing, and she's like, "We're trying to get them to calm down," and I'm like tickling them and playing with them, and we're running around the house. And it's like it just feels like it's time to do that. This is what we do. And so that's great to hear. I'm going to use that as my excuse next time of
Yeah,
why
yeah,
we're roughhousing. Just teaching them to get ready for leaving the coop, babe. That's all.
yeah,
That's it. Uh, what, like you have your 3R framework that you use. I'm assuming that you use that as like kind of a downstream or ripple effect, right? Like we do it in this way. Was there a reason for coming up with it in that order, or does it matter really what order it's done in?
yeah. The other way I think about like the order is you've got stuff that you do in the moment. In the moment your child makes a mistake, in the moment you want to yell at them, in the moment that they come to you and tell you this way that they've messed it up, right? There's the in the moment stuff and then the out of the moment stuff. So, that piece about being responsive, that's the in the moment. That is, and I always joke, but like taking a breath is like always the answer, right? Your kid brings anything to you, you want to say anything, like just one breath, and then you could say, and this for me is like, this is one of my go to phrases: I'm really glad you're bringing this to me, right? Or I'm really glad we're talking about this. Like, and then just pause for a second, right? Because what you're indicating to your child in that moment is, I am building a sense of moving towards you, not away from you. That to me is what we are always doing as parents. We're always indicating to our kiddos, is my action as a kid bringing me closer to my parents, or is it bringing me further away? When I think about like down the road, I think almost all of us want to have a 25-year-old kid who, when they're in serious trouble, their body, right, they think to themselves, I got to call dad, right? I got to call my parents.
Yes.
And we are building that feeling of either a moving toward or a moving away in the everyday, day to day, when they spill the milk, when they don't get their shoes on, when they lied about something, right? All of those are little micro moments, and they're checking, not consciously, subconsciously. Did that action I just took bring me closer to dad or push me away?
It's like, is it going to be safe to be around when I've done X, Y, or Z?
Yeah,
Doesn't matter what it is, right?
that's right. That's right. And it's all of that wiring, right? Think about so many of us now. I'm like, there's some things I might do that I don't know that I would want to tell my parents even now, right? Like,
Yeah, of course.
and so thinking about what kind of interactions on a small scale right now build that kind of relationship with our kiddo in 5, 10, 20 years, that they still feel a sense of wanting, right, to come toward us
Yeah.
when they have a choice. At some point, our kids are going to have a choice whether or not they want to call us, come over, hang out, spend time together. And that choice is closer, I think, than many of us want to think. So it's like, how can I be wiring that in them right now that it's safe to come tell me? So that's that responsive piece, is how do I respond in the moment when my kiddo brings something to me?
Got it. And you're saying take a breath and tell them that you're happy that they brought it to you. That's the
Yep.
first
That is
step.
the
And
first.
then
Yep.
from there.
And
And I'm sure
then,
it would help diffuse a lot of stuff. But yeah, what's the next step?
yeah, I think, from there, often I'll just ask a question, sharing or solving. Sometimes our kids just want to share about what happened. There isn't a need necessarily for action or consequence, or right. Like sometimes they just need to talk about it. So in that case, we're just listening.
We actually worked on this at WeBus camp where we
Okay.
had the guys had to say, something that was going on in their life or whatever it is that was really bothering them. And we weren't allowed to try to fix it or give them experience or advice. We just had to sit there and go, wow, I really understand why you feel that way.
Yeah.
I would feel the same way too. And that was it. There was
Yeah.
no fixing, there was no whatever. It was just letting him know that, like, I feel you and I understand and I would feel the same.
hmm Totally. And again, think about like, what does that build in a person? It almost like communicates a sense of, I trust you. You can figure this out, right? I don't have to solve it for you. I don't have to fix it for you. I am infusing into you a belief in your own trust and your own ability to figure this out, which again, like long term, absolutely that's what we want of our kids. We want them to feel like they can figure out and solve their own problems.
Yeah, I remember feeling like while going through the exercise, like, wow, I can be whoever I am in this moment without the feeling of judgment from somebody else. Because you go to somebody else and you want to speak to them about whatever's going on, that's making you feel whatever you're feeling. But a lot of times you don't because you just don't want the freaking advice that they're going to give you or the whatever, trying to tell you it's okay when it's really not. And you just don't deal with that. Right. And so that's like why our only rule in WeBus is you can share experiences and not advice. Right. You can only come with like shared experiences. And that's kind of what I hear you honestly saying here too. Is like, don't try to give your kids advice. Listen to their experiences that they're having and then connect with them on those experiences.
Totally. Especially at first, because like let's say you ask that question, sharing or solving, right? And they just want to share. But then there is, or maybe they say solving. Either way, you really listening to them without interrupting, without judgment, without comparing, without advice. When you get to the place where they want to figure out how to solve this thing or you need to help them solve it, you're going to be so much more well equipped to help them because you were actually listening. Right?
Yeah.
Now you really understand. So, and I remember talking to one of the young people I was working with, and it's in my TEDx talk, one of the quotes from young people about how her dad did this so skillfully, where he would always listen. And then, of course, when she wanted his help problem solving, he was really good at it because he'd really been listening, and then they could brainstorm together in a way that felt collaborative and not this like, I know best, when I was your age, right? Like all of those pieces. It's so much more helpful when you can listen first. And I love that you all have that experience because in some ways it is similar when a friend comes to us, right? We're not going to tell him, well, I can't believe you did that, or how could you? Like that doesn't build connection. So think about the people you go to for support and why do you go to them? Because you don't feel a sense of judgment, right? They're not going to give you advice that's not going to land. It is the same thing with our kiddos. They operate in the very same way.
Just to switch gears a little bit, how prevalent or do you see this often where guys, especially, just won't have people to talk to? They won't have a strong tribe around them that's, preaching the same things. And because I feel like when I look at like my wife's group of friends or whatever, it seems like they're all pretty similar. They really get along. They talk to each other a lot. They're always texting. They're always calling. They're always Marco Poloing each other. When it comes to guys, it's like pulling teeth just to get them to text you back, right? How important is that for dads to create a tribe around them and a group around them that are going towards the same goals and are going to answer your text message and those types of things?
Yeah. I mean, it's huge. The thing that popped into my head when you were asking that is, there's this incredibly longitudinal study. There's a book about it now called The Good Life, I think is the name of the book, but it's based on this like 80-year-long longitudinal study about well-being and health. And by and large, beyond any other metric, like exercise, eating well, right, stress management, apart from all of that, the quality of your relationships is the number one predictor of well-being and long-term health and longevity. So it's kind of like the most important thing,
Is
and
this that Harvard study too that they've been doing forever on
it
people and
might be
longevity?
based
Right?
on
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Like I said, I think that book is called The Good Life that just came out.
Yeah. There's a podcast actually based on the book, I believe.
Okay. Okay.
I listen to it all the time. Right when you said The Good Life, I'm like, I know that podcast, but I haven't
Yeah.
heard of it. So yeah, and I think, and now that you're saying that, I'm like, I'm pretty sure all the podcasts they do are based off of that study, basically, and talking about how important it is to have a group around you in a tribe.
hmm And, I think to your point, I do see this very much. That doesn't exist for many dads. Um, it's harder to like, I don't have my buddy that I call up and say, I yelled at my kids and I feel horrible. Like that just, right? Versus many of moms can easily do that. I think for me, it's like, gosh, that's why what you all are creating feels so incredibly important. Because also, yes, therapy, if you have access, right, and you find somebody that's a good fit, that's not accessible to everybody. That's not a good fit for everybody. And it makes it feel like if I don't have that, I can't move through some of this hard stuff. That is the furthest thing from the truth, right?
Yeah.
Our
Yeah.
supportive community, think about the guys in your group, right? How many of them have moved through really hard shit, not because they've had a therapist, but because they've had other guys who've said, yeah, me too,
Man,
right?
we've had so many. I literally just yesterday, there's a guy that was on the group and he's going, it's really funny that now I come to a group of 50 strangers to talk about my most intimate things, but here we go. And he goes on this 10-minute long talk. And not only do we see it very helpful in the fact that men have someone to talk to on this app that we have, but it seems like they just don't talk in general. And when they're talking, most of the time, by the end of their conversation with themselves on the app, they're like, "Actually, I figured it out. I'm good. I don't need any experience. I don't need any advice. Like, we're good to go. Thank you for listening." And then they go on, and it's like, I think that's a skill that a lot of dads don't have, is just articulating our feelings. And when we have the platform presented to us like we have at WeBus and Marco Polo, you're forced to do a couple things. You're forced to talk your thoughts out, which slow down your thoughts and help you actually think about your thoughts better. And then you're forced to listen. So one of the cool things is that I can't interrupt what you're saying on Marco Polo. I have to listen to the video and then I can put my thoughts in afterwards. And I feel that as friends, we have a tendency to interrupt and to jump in before we really truly understand what this person is saying, or before they even truly understand what it is they're saying. And a lot of times, I think we have it backwards, where we come to friends as therapists and therapists come as friends. And what we actually want are the friends to show up as therapists. And what a therapist's job is to listen. It's not to actually tell you what to do. It's to help you decide what you're gonna do. And so most people get mad at therapists, right? Because they're like, "Tell me what to do." And the therapist's like, "That's not the way this works. Like, you need to figure this out yourself, and I'm here to guide you in that direction." And then when you go to your friends, most of your friends are trying to give you advice and tell you what to do, and it's the last thing you want from them. You just want them to listen. You just want them to be an ear, to be somebody to understand what you're going through, so that when you show up a little off, they're like, "Oh, I understand. I know what you're going," instead of I have to put on this mask and this face when I go to these places because I don't want to be this person.
Mhm.
That's the other thing that WeBus kind of gives guys, is that I think that we're maybe not at a spot yet where men can be totally vulnerable and open up and share their deepest feelings to their friends. But they do seem to be willing to do that with strangers. And I think it's because maybe it's an ego thing or maybe whatever, but I know that when I started WeBus, I started it because I was really, really, really struggling, but I didn't want the people closest to me to know that. I wanted a group of people I could talk to that I wasn't worried about it affecting my day-to-day life. That when I went to these areas, everybody's like, "Oh, Wes is struggling. Oh, let's make him feel better." I wanted it to be normal. I wanted to walk in and say, "Hey, what's up, Wes? Hey, what's up?" So and so. But I also wanted to be able to get out my feelings and I wanted to be able to talk about it. And that's what WeBus has been for me and for all the other dads, is like this secret club that we can go to share our real true feelings and thoughts and emotions and cry and be weird. And I say weird because it's what society doesn't think men should do right now. But what I hope my daughter marries in the future is what we're creating within WeBus, is just a bunch of dads that are like actually willing to talk and to listen and to get their thoughts out there and to not scream and yell, but instead to respond to that stuff. Listening to TED Talks like yours,
Yeah.
is very encouraging for us. Having a platform like Marco Polo is another huge piece of it. But if you look at that, okay, we got guys that are starting to look in that direction and they're creating these dad groups, and this is really cool. We got, people like you that are putting out the education, the information. What's the missing piece
Mhm.
in your
Mhm.
opinion?
I mean, a couple of things come to mind for me. One of which I hadn't thought about this till right now. I'm an avid Marco Polo user. Is I love how you can't interrupt. It's like kind of really good practice ground. So I just loved that. One of the things I think is really important about what you all are doing is you are, for the time being, meeting dads where they're at, which is if I can't yet say this to my partner or my wife, my closest friends, I can at least practice in this less vulnerable space. So I really love that. I think, one could make an argument like, don't keep it secret, like bring that. And in the same breath, I would say, I love that you're meeting guys where they are. And where they are right now, it sounds like, based on your perspective, is it's not yet comfortable to bring it in this space, and I'm still able to find it in this space. So I think part of it is just a comfort level, right? As you do it more and more. And I wonder, from your perspective, have you been able to bring it more to some of your closer relationships yet or not yet? I think that's just an interesting question.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think that it's hit or miss depending on honestly, if I really think about it, it's to the guys that are in WeBus that I see personally that we open up about and we're whatever, but everybody else, you're right, it's not yet.
Yeah. And, it's like finding the folks who are ready for that and just, again, going there to find that kind of support. There's something so important, I think, about finding your supports wherever, whatever that looks like for you. But the other piece I was thinking that I don't know that I'm just kind of processing in real time, which I love is, so much of what you were talking about like, you're going to get advice that you don't really want to hear or it feels too vulnerable. Dads have this ability, I think, to relate to kids, maybe in a way that moms don't, right? Like if my kiddo doesn't want to share something, I don't understand that maybe as easily as my husband, right? If they're feeling like it's too vulnerable. So I think that's a really important piece of like, you all can relate in with your kiddos, right? Because for me, even if it's my daughter doesn't want to share something, I'm like, what do you mean you don't want to tell me, right? Like,
Let's
we talk
go.
about everything. Yes. But, my husband, it's like, could relate in of like, oh yeah, that feels kind of vulnerable. I could see why maybe she doesn't want to talk about it. So I just think, gosh, what a beautiful way that you can relate in a unique way that maybe moms, we can't always. So I just wanted to kind of like elevate that because I think that's an important, at least aha I was having in the the in between as we were chatting. One of the things that I think about with our kids are developing their sense of self based on the version of them that we reflect back.
Yes,
You
they're
know?
mirrors is what you're saying.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And I just think, if we can be keeping that in mind, and again, that's why the repair is so important. We're not always going to reflect back a generous, compassionate energy. We're just not.
Yeah, we're not perfect.
No. And it's so ironic, I think, because part of, I think, what we're trying to break is this idea of perfectionism. And yet then it shows up in our parenting, right? Like, I think logically we can be like, perfectionism's not good. That's not achievable. We're never going to get there. But I wonder about the standard that we hold ourselves to as parents.
Especially as dads, I feel like, and I don't wanna speak to women being less, but just in
Yeah.
my own shoes, I'm like, "Oh my god, it feels, I mean, exponentially tougher to be a dad in today's society than it does to be a mom in today's society." And I
Mm,
think it's because of that switch that is trying to happen. It feels like the world's trying to make males a little bit more understanding, a little less reactive, a little whatever it may be. And there's this natural resistance against that with a certain group of people. Like we were talking before we got on here, just like, the brutality of this world. And if we look at the brutal things that have happened over our lifetime, it's exorbitantly men that have done these acts. Flying planes into buildings, mass shootings, stabbings, bombings, just the most horrible things in the world. Like I have a hard time reflecting back on any time a woman has done something like that, right? And there's this constant like talk of, we talked earlier, toxic masculinity and people fighting against that or whatever. It's like instead of the being this fight to be masculine or not masculine, why can't it just be about being reactive or not reactive?
uh-huh, uh-huh.
And if we can learn to be less reactive, what does that actually look like in practice?
Yeah. I love that, Wes. So there's another person that studies like manhood and fatherhood. Richard Reeves is his name. And he talks about, instead of this framing of like toxic masculinity,
Yeah.
he likes to talk about it as immature masculinity and mature
I love
masculinity,
that. I love
right?
that because
Because
I
it's
hate
like,
toxic masculinity
yeah,
because it immediately makes men run, you
sure.
know?
Yeah, right. And it's like, there are traits that are more feminine traits and ones that are more masculine. The goal isn't like, and I think this was him that was talking about how he sometimes feels like we're trying to measure men by as they're like not as effective women. Like we're not trying to turn men into like feminine. It's about taking the masculine and having it show up in mature, again, that idea of like mature ways, which is to me like self-responsibility, self-regulation. It's still about, even it still could even be about anger, right? We talked about this before. Anger is our life force. Anger is like that feeling in us that says, this is unjust, right? There's a boundary that's been crossed. I have a need that's not being met. We need that. So it's not about like tempering it. It's about how do we be responsive and mature with it and intentional and not reactive. So I think about it that way. It's like, how do we shift? We still want courage. We still want risk taking, all of the things, right? The important traits of masculinity. How do we have them become mature such that they are, it's like this sturdy, grounded leadership that I think about.
Yeah. I always think of like, how do we use our words and not our bodies, right? Like we just go towards physical reactions constantly. Beat this person up. I'm going to shoot this person. I'm going to bomb this place. I'm going to run this car into this building. I'm going to do whatever
Mhm.
because I don't have any more words left
Mm,
to express to you how frustrated I am about this or angry or feeling used or whatever it may be. And it's like, I feel like it's just a problem of communication, really.
mm,
It's like if we had better words to use or more eloquent words to use or a way to put them together better, I think that we could use those more. But it seems like we just get so overwhelmed and frustrated with life
mhm.
that that doesn't allow us the energy to be able to think of the things that we want to say. So we just go, screw it. I'm just going to use my muscles,
Sure.
you know,
Well,
or
see,
whatever.
and I see it, I totally can see what you're saying about the communication piece and the words. There's another piece that I see a little bit differently, which is so much, and we talked a little bit about this earlier too, like we externalize, right? If we feel anger, then it can come out as blame, right? Instead of being able to say, whew, I am feeling this and I can tolerate this feeling of anger, disappointment, frustration. I can allow it to live inside me so it doesn't have to explode outside of me, right? In a reactive way. I can allow it to live in me and I can integrate it and take the wisdom from it and then articulate it, right? And respond. So I think we're saying the same thing, but I do think there's this piece around getting practiced at tolerating. And it's
Yes.
like, of course, men don't know how to do that because for many of you, it was either figuratively or literally beaten out of you. Don't feel your feelings. Don't cry. Figure it out. Get back up, right? Like, so of course you have arrived in adulthood and there is a skill gap because of course there would be the gap if you never had that embodied practice.
Yeah. I remember literally growing up and, you get spanked or whatever. My mom would take it to another level most of the time, and she would say that the spankings will continue until you stop crying. So it was about being able to, in the fire, absorb all of your feelings and not feel them while you were getting beat with a belt, right? Like, and that's nothing compared to what some people have been through and gone through in our generation. And imagine the generation before that and how much exponentially worse it was, right? Do you see physicality playing a role anywhere in parenting?
Maybe I need you to say a little bit more about physicality.
Spanking,
Mm.
grabbing, pull, anything that would be, I'm using my physical strength to
Mhm.
teach you a lesson in some way. Do you believe that that has a place anywhere in parenting?
Yeah, I don't. And here's why.
I
Because,
agree, but I just,
yeah.
wanna
Yeah,
hear
and
it.
I think, I never wanna, it's the same thing. There's no use in shaming, and I know that people still grapple with this. Again, back to that idea of what comes natural is how you were parented, right? So it makes sense. For me, the research is so clear about the negative impact of physical use anyway, what it does is it wires violence next to love. And when our kids grow up and find themselves in other partnerships and relationships, the last thing we want is for them to have wired violence next to love.
What do you see that show up as?
Abusive interpersonal relationships. Yeah.
I mean, I definitely feel like not the need to beat my wife, that's for sure. Definitely don't feel that, but I feel I wanna punch a hole through a wall when anything goes wrong versus, "Oh, I'm gonna sit in this and feel this," right? Like, it's my reaction, like you said, and it's
Yep.
taken over 8 years. Now my daughter is 8 years old, my oldest, of therapy and working through this and meditation and walking meditation and all sorts of other and exercise and basically what I call frustration or my therapist told me it's called frustration tolerance, Wes. You're just trying to learn how to deal with frustration. And there's physical things that you could put yourself through that will help you with this and like cold plunges or CrossFit workouts or high intensity stuff or anything that just makes you feel uncomfortable and you have to stay in it and kind of keep working through it cognitively in a sense, right? Like will help you with that. But is there anything else that you've seen that really helps people overcome that?
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, yeah, I think it's such an important question because I don't think the goal is to never express your aggression. Like, to me, that is like a primal that we were born with, right? We are animals at the core. We
Yeah.
haven't
I mean,
evolved out of.
I need to be zen in this
Yep,
moment, instead of
totally.
like, okay, I can feel this, but
Yep,
what's a way to
right.
feel this, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, there's different schools of thought about this, right? One of them is, what are my physical outlets, right? My husband's got a punching bag in the basement, like for sure, right? So I think there is like varying levels. I do think because that's how the stress cycle works, right? We move into fight or flight, we might move into shutdown. In order to get back to a place of calm, our bodies have to complete the stress cycle, meaning they have to go back through fight or flight. So whether that's going for a walk or a run or going and lifting or right finding some physical expression, I think actually is really important. And then I think the other piece of it is, I don't know how woo this is going to sound, but like,
You love woo woo, go for it.
yeah, is like befriending your anger. Like, what is your anger trying to tell you?
This is
I
what my therapist said, like in that moment to talk to your child,
Mhm.
you as a kid, and they're actually angry or sad or upset in that moment. He's like, sit across from them and ask them why. And what do they need? And how can you make them feel better? And that's what you
Yeah.
need and want, right?
Yes. And the anger piece, it's like, again, so if you think about it as like a friendship, if I have a friend who every time I try to say something honestly, like they're always like wanting to avoid it, right?
Yeah,
They want to numb, oh, I don't want to talk about this. Let's just watch the game or like,
a big deal,
I'm
bro.
gonna lose, yeah, I'm gonna lose trust. So I think about again my relationship with my anger. Do I have a sense of trust there? Like, does my anger trust I'm gonna take it seriously and listen and figure out what is the wisdom there that it's trying to tell me?
Or thought of it that way. Does the anger trust that I'm gonna take it seriously? Because
Because
I
if not,
almost
it's gonna come out sideways.
yeah, you almost look at it as like a negative. It's almost like somebody's not working with you, somebody's working against you. So you don't even wanna understand it. You just want it to go away.
Right. And of course, you want it to go away because you never were taught that your anger is helpful or important or valued, right? Like, of course. But I love that idea of like, all right, friend, like bringing it into the fold. What are you trying to tell me? And I use a lot of parts work in my coaching where it's like, all right, yeah, I've got an angry part. What's it trying to tell me? How old is this part? Right? Where'd it come from? Right? Just trying to understand it.
Angry, this
Right.
part of me is got it.
Yes. Yep. And there's space for that to be at the table. I think about it like a big boardroom and I have like highest self Chrissy and then I've got all my parts, right? Like they're all like the associates at the table and they all have valuable, important things to share. And actually, I might just tie this to parenting really quick. Our kids, this idea of parts work is so intuitive for them. Like that is one of my best in my own parenting, right? Like just last week, my daughter was so mad about something and then she was feeling so guilty that she was mad. And so we had this beautiful conversation of like, wow, that part of you is really angry. What do you think it's trying to tell you? And this idea of like, there's nothing wrong. There's actually something really right about feeling this anger. It's a message for you. And I think if we can think about it that same way, Our emotions are vehicles toward aligned action. That's what I'm always thinking. All right, anger, what's up? Right. And guide me toward intentional, aligned action.
Well, I don't want to keep you too long. We're coming up on an hour, which was like
Okay.
so
Yeah.
fast. I love it. But you had to, leave one dad who's in front of you and really struggling with their anger, the way that they react to their children, maybe the way that they're dealing with a divorce and that situation of the kids and their anger and everything. What would be the one piece of advice that you would give that dad who's struggling?
First thing that comes to mind for me is if you were to close your eyes and think about your own dad and think about what is something that you do for your kids, for your family, with your kids, with your family that your dad never did. And just remind yourself of the things that you are already doing, the cycles you're already breaking, the uphill battle you've had to had because you never had it modeled for you. And here you are trying to like be home for dinner or take the kids to soccer practice or listen while your daughter's freaking out about something that you don't think is important, right? Like whatever those little things are that you're doing that you know your dad never did, that is the evidence of the fact that you're a really good dad and you are really trying and you're breaking cycles and you're doing that really hard work. I think that's what I would say.
So I hear, don't give yourself such a hard time. Pat yourself on the back a little bit. You're probably, if you're even thinking about this, you're probably doing a pretty good job.
Yeah. And then to reach out for support. I mean, again, that's where what you all are doing is so important because I think that's the other piece I would say is you are not alone. No matter what it is you've done or not done or can't figure out or messed up, I am just 100% sure that you are not the only one. So finding that support.
Thank you so much for joining us. I
Yes.
appreciate you. Where can
Thank
people find you?
you. Yeah. So my website is Courageous Parents, and I do a lot of coaching. One thing that I'll just say is I do a lot of leadership coaching and training and parent coaching and training. And sometimes people think that's really different work. But the truth is, the skills that we are gaining in parenting are the very same skills that we need for leadership. And so there's a lot of overlap. That's part of why I love what I do is helping parents just become like the sturdy leaders of their family. So I do a lot of coaching and you can find more about that either at chrissychard.com or courageousparents.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Chrissy, for joining us. And hopefully we'll get you again in the future. We would
Yes.
love to have you out for WeBus Camp too. So hopefully we'll talk more about that in the future as well. But thanks for joining us on the WeBus podcast.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Wes.